across the world. They are growing, and they're bringing so many people, young people in, and they're really helping the economy in a big way. In Milwaukee or the Racine and Kenosha area, Foxconn, an Asian company that makes computer screens and computer consoles, are going to move in, and the governor, gave them the house, to make that deal happen, and they're supposed to create like 13,000 jobs, in the Milwaukee, Kenosha, Racine, Milwaukee region. So Wisconsin, from an economic development standpoint, they're making some pretty good choices. It's still a good place to live. Crime, is decent. In the past, Madison would have maybe 3-4 murders a year, but now you're looking at higher murders. I think this summer we had 9 murders during the summer. Safety is, but I mean, for a city of this size, any murders are bad, but for a city of this size, they do pretty good in terms of keeping laws going and making sure that the community is safe.
Wow. And one of the other things I remember from doing some of my research, and this is actually, we talked about the last time that we had a phone conversation, this was probably years ago, was that in addition to all the stuff that you've been doing in terms of government, now doing the stuff with the Urban League, you have also had some times where you have gone into the whole field of entrepreneurship, because I believe that you have gone into a couple of your own businesses and things of that nature. So why don't you share with us a little bit about that as well, because I know you had a couple of entrepreneurship ideas that you explored.
Yeah. So when I left the Department of Transportation, I went to work for an engineering firm called Bloom Companies, and I was their senior vice president for their national organization. And after being there for 3 years, I started my own company called Rojack Consulting. With Rojack Consulting, I've done consulting with government agencies on procurement on transportation projects, diversification on transportation projects in terms of minority labor, minority business development. I've done strategic planning. Just recently, my company, Rojack, which I still own and work with, did a study on this new office on African American affairs in Milwaukee, where after there was a lot of rioting and burning a couple of summers ago in the Sherman Park area, which is a historic African American middle class area, the county executive asked my company to come in to make some recommendations to this new office on African American affairs about what their focus should be. So we just finished that study not too long ago. And also, that from a hobby standpoint, I have another company called Rueben Smoked Meat where I do some big barbecue events. So when you're having that next jazz event, I'll bring my stuff down there and cook some meat.
Yeah, you don't have to do that. We got jazz events with Art of Cool. We've got the Blues Festival. We've got all kinds of stuff. So we have to bring your product down here so that you can do that. And who knows, Dean, you think that they might be able to bring it to the homecoming events that y'all have down in Petersburg?
I'm quite sure they can. It's enough space for everybody.
And you might want to tell us a little bit about. I was going to say you might want to tell us which branch you're with.
That's what I was getting ready to say. I am a proud member of the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, sir.
Oh, that's all right, man. Another big blessing. I appreciate that.
Yes.
Some of my best.
Yes.
Some of my best friends are your frats. So yeah. Yep. Love my Greek brothers. Yep.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dean.
No. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I remember correctly, you were actually a member of another one of those proud frats as well, though.
Yeah, Kappa Alpha.
Yeah, he was a member of the Kappa, so I'm sure you know some Kappas, Dean.
Yes, I do. And starting with all of my cousins. All of my cousins and a couple of my good friends. We go back over 30 years now. They are proud Kappa men.
Yeah.
And one of the people I've had the pleasure of seeing most recently, because he's actually been doing some work down here, because he's been very active in the whole charter school movement, and, he's a Durham native and has been very much involved here, and that's actually part of the reason that I got to Marquette is I have had the pleasure of seeing Howard Fuller a couple of times because Howard has been still very much active in terms of being a proponent for charter schools and things of that nature. So he's been here a few times, including being here in North Carolina not that long ago. I think it was maybe about a year or two ago, talking about some of the books that he's published. So I'm sure that you probably run across Mr. Fuller as well a few times up there in Wisconsin.
Yeah, sometimes I run across him at the airport where we're he's getting off, I'm getting on the plane. And I think the last time I really saw him was at Annette Polly Williams' funeral. She was a long-term member of the House of Representatives here in Wisconsin. Remember, her daughter, Krista Williams, went to college with us, but she actually is the mother of Choice, of the Choice program, and had done a lot of great work with Choice. But for her, she had the idea that Choice would be an option for giving African-American students a greater opportunity to get a better education that the Milwaukee school was lacking. And so her and Howard partnered on many of that. But it's amazing here in Wisconsin how Choice and charter has taken off. And, under the last administration, it was mostly for African-American neighborhoods, but now you're seeing, the white community really taking advantage of charter and Choice. And I said many times I know Polly Williams might be turned over in her grave because that's not what she expected for Choice schools.
Yeah, I'm sure she was expecting to impact more of our community and things of that nature. And you mentioned Sherman Park. I actually do have some good memories of Sherman Park because I actually did a brief internship when I was at Marquette at the Sherman Park News. So I definitely do remember that Sherman Park community and remembered having a brief, it might have only been maybe a month or two internship there at that Sherman Park News. So I remember going to that community quite a bit. And, of course, as you remember, definitely traveling around Milwaukee. I was actually talking to a friend of mine, and we were reflecting on the Summerfest and some of the things that apparently are still there in Milwaukee that are still going on that were there when we were in school back in the early 80s. So it's great seeing some of those institutions that are still taking place even to this day, some not quite, but almost 40 years ago. So they're still going strong and still doing wonderful things there on the cultural community. I was telling a friend of mine about the Jazz Gallery, which I don't think is still in business, but that was a jazz club that was there in our community. And, of course, I was reminding folks about, because I told a friend of mine that lives in Vegas that's a Marquette graduate. They actually were one of the editors of our school paper, and Janine Klein, and I was telling her about remembering about some of the clubs that were there, places like Park Avenue and Papagayos and some of those places that we hang out at on occasion.
Yeah. A lot of those clubs are gone now.
Yeah, that was many years ago. So I figure they've got a whole new scene going on now, and hopefully they've got some jazz clubs and some other kinds of entertainment going on. I know that there's a friend of mine that I've met through Facebook that's a musician there in the area, so he does tell me that there is a little bit of an R&B and jazz scene that exists there in the Milwaukee area as well as other parts of Wisconsin. So I'm glad to see that things like that are still happening and still taking place. So that's really good seeing. And one of the Marquette graduates, and I think she might have graduated about 2 years ahead of us, and I was trying to remember, is Sharon Capel. Sharon Capel works at Duke University, but she's a Marquette graduate and involved in their communications department at Duke. So she's one of the people that keeps me informed as to some of the things that are still going on campus. And every once in a while I'll hear from some other folks as well, but she's right there on the Duke campus, and I don't live far from Duke. So I actually hear from her quite a bit as to some of the things that are happening on our campus. And so I get a chance to see those things going on. I was wondering, do you ever hear from any of our past folks that we used to hang out with? Like I remember Kevin Ingram, and I remember, of course, Craig Patterson, who was, while I was your roommate, he was Doc Rivers' roommate. And, of course, I do follow Doc's career on the basketball court, seeing how he's doing with the Clippers and everything.
Yeah, I hear from both of those guys. I hear from Craig more frequently. In fact, I'm in Atlanta maybe like once or twice a year. I end up spending a lot of time with him. He's still doing customer service work, still doing his thing, still following, Doc around to every venue that Doc goes to. So he is pretty active, a pretty active fan, still Doc's number one fan. Kevin Ingram works for the Department of Public Instruction, and he's like an assistant superintendent. And he just recently got married, probably like 3 years now ago.
Oh, wow.
He got remarried. Yeah, he lost his wife, his first wife, and then he remarried. So he's making a big contribution in the education field here. He spent a lot of time working with Sandy at the EOP program, and then left there and went to the Department of Public Instruction. And so he's still there. He calls me every now and then. I hear from Kevin maybe about every other month. So he's doing quite well.
Glad to hear you're doing well. Now, one of the things that I noticed is one of the projects that you did under Rajak was you did something with the Dulles Airport. So I was wondering if you could tell our listeners a little bit about that, because it sounds like that was a major project. I mean, not everybody gets a contract with the Washington, D.C. Airport, Dulles.
Yeah. So I did a contract with them to try to get more diverse minority businesses on that project. And so that was the connection between the Washington and to the suburbs in Virginia. And I helped put together procurement language for contractors to make sure that they put together plans about how they would use disadvantaged businesses as a part of the project. Because in Washington, D.C., they get it. They understand that in order for prime contractors to use minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses, you have to compel them to do it. And so they build in goals in their contracts to say, in D.C., you might even have like a 40% disadvantaged business enterprise goal, on a project. So when they were doing the recruitment for companies to work on the project, I put the criteria together to tell them what a bona fide plan would look like. And so all of those contractors would have to submit a plan along with their request for information, RFI, and I would look at those plans and evaluate those plans and score those plans for the Washington Airport Authority. Afterwards, I was a part of advising the Washington Airport Authority about which plans were the best plans of all the ones that were there. So that's one of the functions that my company does. We also do what we call compliance tracking and monitoring. And so once an individual wins the contract and they put a plan together to say that they're going to use minority businesses, my company will track that company to make sure that they're doing what they said they were going to do. And usually I would act as what we call an owner's rep and making sure that I'm doing this tracking for the owner. So if they're not doing it, I can go to the owner to say, well, they made the commitment to use this number of minority contractors and women-owned contractors or subcontractors, and they're not doing it.
Wow. And what are some of the other agencies that you are on the board of? I know when I looked up and did research on you, you've actually a member of quite a few boards. So I was wondering if you could share with us some of those boards that you're on. Yeah,
I'm on the board of United Way, and that is probably one that takes up quite a bit of my time. I'm on the board of the Downtown Madison Incorporated, which is kind of like the economic development arm in our downtown Madison area. I'm on the board of what we have is a regional planning entity that does regional transportation, like here in the city. So I serve on quite a few boards here. I'm
That's
serving
cool.
on a national commission with the Wallace Foundation to help with the Every Student Succeeds Act. So lots of involvement.
Sounds like you're definitely staying involved, and that's a great thing. Now, you were talking about the downtown, and that's one of the things that we've talked about on this show and everything. I know here in Durham, we've had a lot of development in our downtown Durham area. We've got the DPAC, which is one of the top theaters in the country, actually, and it's a over 2,500 seat theater, and it brings in all kinds of shows, Broadway, all kinds of musical acts and things of that nature. We've got the ballpark, which is our minor league ballpark that just actually won the minor league championship, and then there's all these new developments that are coming up left and right. But throughout all this development, one of the things that people have been concerned about is the two things. One, the not having enough of the minorities being involved in having ownership in some of this great development in downtown, and also gentrification. So I was wondering if that has been an issue in your state and city as well, and how y'all are combating those things.
Yeah, that's definitely an issue. Most of our folks are definitely not developers. So I'm working with this one group called Forward Community Investment. And Forward Community Investment is like a bank, community bank, and we do trainings to help develop minority contractors. Marquette University